And we
It
are
is never Tuesday.
live, going live.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, good
Welcome.
to see everybody.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm going to make sure we are live in the group, so just settle in, grab
All
yourself something to
right.
drink.
And I am Saul Ravencraft. Welcome. Madam Z is checking behind the scenes to make sure that everything is going on. I will also be taking a look at the comments. So if anyone has anything to share, if anyone has any questions, just pop it on in there. We'll address it live, but if you happen to be catching the replay, that's okay. Go ahead and put your comment in anyway, and we'll address it. We'll talk to you.
Correct.
So that's
We
how
love
it
questions,
works.
don't we, Saul?
We do. I like talking to you, but it's more fun when there are more people involved in the conversation.
Because who wants to just talk about the same old stuff, right? We
That's
want other
right.
people's perspective. Let
That
me
is
share this
right.
out with everybody. Let's see. So, how's my favorite Saul Ravencraft doing? What's going on in your
How
world?
many Saul Ravencrafts do you have?
Just one that matters.
Oh, listen to you. Um, no, things are going good. I'm spending a lot of effort on a few things that are coming up. About half of it has to do with what we're doing, but one of them is early on, as you and I talked about. I get these weird requests sometimes because who I am and what I do. And there is a convention going on in Pflugerville. It's called the Texas
Oh,
Association of Magicians. And it is for stage magicians. And they want to do something weirder in the evening. And so they have brought me in. I am hosting 3 shows around midnight called TAOM After Dark. And I've invited some folks I know from other parts of the country. We have a guy named Bizarro who is coming in from Las Vegas,
that's
and
funny.
his world is like a cartoon world. It is some strange, wonderful stuff. And then on Saturday, my friend Paul Prater is coming to us, and he is a master storyteller. He's going to bring some of his relics and some of his tales and do some weird Twilight Zone kind of entertainment that's very
Nice.
interactive with everybody. And then on Sunday, my friend Vince Wilson is coming from Baltimore, and he has been leading seances in that area.
Good.
More like what they did in the 19th century. They're
Mm-hmm.
stage seances. That's not to say that contact doesn't happen. It absolutely does. But it's more about the entertainment because when people were in the 19th century, they didn't have TV, they didn't have video games, they didn't have radio or movies or anything like that. They had to figure out how to entertain each other. And when spiritualism started to come about, there were spiritualists that would rent space in a hall. Lectures and things like that often took places in these halls, and these folks would go in and they would do a séance from the stage. And some of
Nice.
them were clearly just purely entertainers, and some of them had figured out an entertaining way to express what they were doing. And
Awesome.
so we're going to explore that arena there. And I'm really looking forward to it. I get to play more of a Rod Serling role in all of this. So I won't be presenting myself so much, just helping to set the context and get out of the way. But I've been responsible for helping to produce the shows and get everything set up. So it's not just going to be walking in and walking out. It's going to be a lot to do.
Sounds like
But
a
there
good
are a few
time.
tickets available to the public.
Good.
And they're like $20 a piece, and you get to come out for a late show and see something weird. I like
That's
that.
always cool. So we want to say hello to Elizabeth for joining us
Yeah,
live.
hi Elizabeth. Good to see you.
Thanks for hanging out with us live. If you're catching the replay, hit hashtag replay so we can give you some replay love. Drop your favorite emoji below, so I know that you're here so we can give you shout outs while we are live. So anything else you want to talk about, Saul? What are we diving into today?
Well, this is something that has come up a few times lately with different people, and this has been something that has been an issue for quite some time with me talking to folks that do ghost hunting and paranormal investigation and that kind of thing. And it is the idea of the etiquette and the protocol for entering into this sort of thing, especially from our point of view, from a more metaphysical point of view. I know there are folks that really are disbelievers in the
Yeah.
idea of spirit connection and entities and that sort of thing. And so
Mhm.
for them, it's all about debunking and it's all about creating that aggressive attitude where people are going to make mistakes and you can bust them.
Yeah.
Um, and that is a mode, right? But if your
Mhm.
goal is connection like ours, and your goal is really to have the opportunity to discover these entities and interact with them, and to protect yourself from things that might not be on your side.
Right.
Because even though we talk about the idea that spirit connection is very safe, the kinds of things that you see in movies and that sort of thing about people getting possessed because they wanted to talk to the ghosts, that's not really normal, but it's not unheard of either. There are
Yeah.
situations where people have experienced aggressive spirits, aggressive entities in these kinds of situations. And mostly that happens because people did not enter into it with the understanding that they could be in danger. And so
Right.
they've gone in, you know, bold as brass, all ready to take on whatever is going to come. There's nothing going to come, and they get into it and they push, and something pushes back.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want to happen. So there's some etiquette for getting into this, and there's also uh, some things, some precautions that you can take that are going to help you to be successful with this and safe for yourself and safe for anyone that you bring into it. Because if you bring people into a situation,
You're
other
responsible.
people to come, and it's all fun and games till someone loses an eye.
Right.
So if you're going to bring people in, then
Until
you
they
need
become
to
possessed.
you got to be responsible for
Yeah.
protecting them as well as yourself. And there's some
Yeah.
straightforward ways to do it, but you
Yeah,
got
we
to
were
do it.
talking about that. We were talking about that in my module in my 6 month communication course, spirit communication course. This module we talked about all about exorcisms of places and exorcism of objects and of people. But I have to reiterate every time I teach this course that you have to go in there with protection, protection, protection. And it's a running joke that, Madam Z's all about protection and it's not, it just has to do with sex, right? Protection is about ghost hunting. And it doesn't have to be, because like you said, people just want to go in there and just, talk to spirits and stuff, but they don't know what it's like, that you just can't do that. You have to have protocols. You have to have ways to protect yourself from attachments and from negative energies, and also, what I call like spirit vampires. Because most of the time, when you're done doing a paranormal investigation, you're pretty exhausted. You're pretty tired. So usually the day after, I just give myself a day to just rest, to do some grounding, to do some maybe some journaling, to do some water healing, or whatever it is to get rid of that energy and to just release any of the stuff that you felt like emotionally drained. So yeah, it's interesting we're talking about this today because I just taught that module on protection, protection, protection when you're doing any type of spirit communication. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean in-person seances, Ouija boards. I'm talking about anytime you're doing like communication with spirits through tarot, through pendulums, through whatever. It doesn't have to be in person. You should always protect yourself whenever you do any form of spirit communication.
And the reason for that may not be obvious, but it
Mm-hmm.
is very so. first, you have to understand that when you're dealing with entities like this, you are dealing with, for lack of a better term, energy beings. These are not
Yep.
physical beings. They have moved into a different plane of existence. And if you've ever studied a martial art like Aikido or something like that, one of the fundamentals of that style of martial art is that you're using the momentum of your opponent against them. So if
Mhm.
they come in, you're going to redirect their momentum from attacking you to falling down and hurting themselves.
Mhm.
And so if you're fighting someone who is skilled in this style of martial art, jumping at them is the worst possible thing you can do because that
Yeah.
is giving them energy to work with, and they're gonna redirect it and they're gonna put you on your ass. And the same kind of thing goes when we're talking about beings of energy. Uh,
Mhm.
they don't have the same physicality to work with that we do.
Mhm.
It's difficult for us to appreciate, especially when we get hyped up about it, when we get nervous,
Yeah.
when we get afraid, because it's a scary place. It's a haunted place, and then he's gonna
Mhm.
get you. We get ourselves worked up into that. Well, that provides energy that something can use against you. That fear, that frustration, all of those kinds of negative things that you bring in. And it can be more than that. Maybe you're cool as a cucumber, but you were really upset and worried about something going on back there, your mortgage, your marriage, who knows what you're carrying around that is extremely negative, the kind of stuff that causes you stress.
Mhm.
And in that situation, bringing that in is something that an entity that wants to mess with you
Yeah.
is able to use. So you got to ground that stuff out. You got to clear that stuff out and go into it with a cool head and a calm spirit. And
Well,
if
it's just
you
like possession. With possession, they don't ever, well, the entities or spirits don't ever possess people who are very strong willed, who are healthy mentally and physically. They always prey on the weak and they break you down. So if you think of that, then you want to make sure that you stand your ground, you're strong. Um, you don't want to make any room for them, for the negative energy to come in and kind of zap you. Because if you look at how spirits work, they feed off our energy. They need that energy in order for them to manifest or to communicate, right? And usually we have electronics, and that's why your electronics will go dead or your flashlight will go dead because they're trying to get that electricity to manifest and electricity to communicate. But the biggest generator of energy and the biggest generator that holds water is us, is the human being. So of course they're going to gravitate toward us first and try to zap our energy in order to amplify theirs. So yes, you have to very much be aware of your thoughts, of where you're at mentally. And just like if I'm feeling sick or I'm feeling like, man, I don't have the spoons this time to, come do paranormal investigation with and bring my A game, then I won't do it.
right,
I'll just back out and say, hey, look, I just can't today. I have to make it another day because you
and
have to be on your toes.
it doesn't mean that you have to be some kind of a badass.
No.
All right, you
No.
don't have to come in there and show how tough you are, but it is very much about being comfortable in your own skin
Yeah.
and not bringing doubt and fear and a lack of confidence in there. You
Yeah.
have to go in knowing what you got. And it's not necessarily difficult to put yourself into that state. I would say that probably the easiest thing that everybody should be doing is a basic grounding and shielding exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And those don't have to be difficult. In fact, in the chat, I'm going to put a link to an article that I wrote with a very basic version of both of these that I teach everybody as a beginner. And of
Mhm.
course, as you move forward, you may have other modes for that. Maybe while I'm looking that up, you could describe a little bit about what you do there.
Yeah. So I do a little bit different. I'm going to show you some props. That's what I use, just a couple of things. The ways that you can protect yourself when before you even start paranormal investigation is through sacred smoke. No matter what you use, sage, or you use lavender, you use rosemary, palo santo, frankincense, and myrrh. Whatever it is you deem as your sacred smoke or smudging, is the way you can do that. So you want to smudge your whole entire body with the sacred smoke, the protective smoke, and just envision that barrier around you and say your mantras, of course, your prayers, call in your guides, guardians, ancestors, whoever your spiritual team is, call them in to protect you, to guard you on all four corners, front, back, side, left, and right. So, and above and below,
Can I say,
right?
don't leave out the top and the bottom.
Correct. So it's a whole circle. Another thing that you can do is I always carry some type of protective stone. Now, when I'm doing tarot readings, I always have, or spirit communication, because I work a lot online, I always have an obsidian sitting by my desk. So it absorbs the negative energy or any spirit communication that is unwanted. And then I have protection oil that I will put on my hands and on the back of my neck, because that's where negative entities and spirits like to enter, because a lot of them are, to be honest, they're chicken shit. So they like to come in through the back. So that's where they come in at normally, is in the base of the neck right here. And also amethyst is really good. Tourmaline is very good. Let's see, dark smoky quartz is really good. Obsidian and jet. Any dark stone is going to be used for your protective stones. Protection oil. And what else do I use?
And what do you do with the protection oil? Do you have to like slather yourself in it, or?
I put it on my hands. And I just rub my hands, just a dab. Because when I'm walking through things, I feel through my hands, right? So I want all of the energy to be protective, so nothing enters through my hands. And I also anoint the bottom of my feet. So when I am walking through a haunted location, then that I don't absorb that negative energy. And so that negative energy does not follow me. Now, here's a tip. When you're doing graveyard workings, and we're going to be doing graveyard workings on September 24th to the 26th on Paranormal Weekend, I either take a piece of chalk and I write an X on the bottom of my foot, or I take anointing oil, protection oil, or banishing oil, and I always put that on the bottom of my foot on an X. So no negative energies, no negative entities can follow me home. And I also, if I'm driving, I will put that anointing oil on all my rear view mirrors, so they can attach to the mirrors, because we all know that spirits love mirrors, right? So I put that also on my rear view mirrors as I'm leaving. Now, some people, when they're done actually with paranormal investigations, before they even enter the home, they will completely take off their clothes and leave it outside, so the entities aren't attached to them as they enter. So that's some people that I know they do that. I don't do that because I smudge and smoke. So I feel that that's not necessary for me, but definitely if it's intuitive to you to take your clothes off before you come in the house, then, so there's nothing attached, go ahead and do that. But it's very intuitive.
But if someone invites you for some naked ghost hunting,
Yeah.
be suspicious.
Skyclad. Exactly. You
Be
can pose a different
suspicious.
way.
That's right. MJ jumped in. Hi, MJ.
Oh, let's see. Oh yeah. Hey MJ, how are you? She's one of my students in my
So
academy.
I don't remember if you mentioned anointing here, but it sounds to me like it wouldn't be bad to put a dab of that protective oil at the base of your neck.
Yeah, I do. I said put it on the base of your neck.
Okay, I
Yeah.
missed that.
Yeah. I put it on my hands and on the base of my neck and on the bottom of my shoes. And you can do it with other people too.
Excellent,
Yeah. Put
excellent.
the anointing oil on there.
I think also another thing that's easy to do that people don't necessarily think to do is to uh, say some kind of a prayer or something that for you is a protective incantation. I know that back in the days of spiritualism, it was very, and when I'm doing a more traditional seance as a recreation of 19th century seances, we will often begin by singing a hymn and saying the Lord's Prayer. And the reason for that is not necessarily because the Christian rituals have any better success than anything else, but I have found that people who grew up in the United States, whether it's something they follow or not, they know the words to the Lord's Prayer because everybody's heard it more than once, and they know the words to Amazing Grace.
Right.
And between those two, it puts people into a very purposeful mood.
Yeah.
If you are with a group of like-minded people or open-minded people who are have other rituals that sort of call this together, then use that. That's all fine. But some sort of a group activity, because the anointing and the smudging and everything like that is really individual, right? We're doing it sequentially for the individuals, but having something that everybody participates in, get everybody into a circle and do this thing, especially something that has a responsive aspect to it. So it's not just the leader saying this and everyone going, ugh.
Yeah.
That everybody is voicing that power together. If you want to have something written down on little cards for everybody to read, some sort of a group affirmation and protection, that would be terrific. But that sort of solidifies everybody together and helps them acknowledge that it's not just them for them, it's everybody for each other. When you go into a situation like that, you've got to look out for each other.
Yeah, we're gonna have this seance for the Paranormal Weekend. We decided to have it in the old church, and it's one of the original churches of the town that's been renovated into an Airbnb. And Saul was like, "We should just start off doing the Lord's Prayer." And I was like, "Well, I never thought about that." So we are probably going to start off the seance doing the Lord's Prayer since it is in a church, and we feel that the spirits would respond better to that than if we come in with a pagan prayer, right?
Right.
So, and that's another thing that you need to think about when you're doing protection and you're doing etiquette with ghost hunting is know where you're ghost hunting at, know where your investigation is at, because you have to tweak how you do investigations to where you're at and what you're doing. For example, if you are investigating a Indian mound or an Indian burial ground or sacred ground, well, then you probably want to bring sweetgrass or sacred smoke as far as like saging or something like that, or tobacco. So you want to know where you're investigating at and how you can tweak that protective energy and your etiquette to that. One of the things we haven't talked about though is ambulance and how to wear. Most people wear crosses. I'm not. I'm not Christian anymore. I left that a long time ago. But I always wear a goddess necklace, and I always call in the protective energy of my goddess to protect me and my ancestors while I'm doing paranormal investigations. But whatever you feel drawn to, whatever you have a protective, strong power amulet, make sure you wear that and bring that with you for investigations. And
Yeah,
people wear necklaces all the time. So
I don't have it on right now, but there is something that you've seen me wear all the time, which is my crystal ball grasps in a raven's claw that I've worn
yeah.
for several years, and that's become very potent for me. The crystal in there has absorbed some of me, so that it's a little bit of a backup battery, like that thing you
Yeah.
plug into your phone,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's good to have back me up. I also use it very often as a pendulum. It's been very useful to me that way.
Right.
Um, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you wear around your neck. It could be
Mm-mm.
something on a keychain. It could be
In your pocket.
something. Um, I was talking to someone the other day that told me the different stones that she carried in her bra every day, and I don't really have an equivalent for that. uh, but whatever works for you. And the idea is that these things are should bring comfort to you. They should be an extension of your grounding.
Right.
Now,
And
as far as etiquette and
Mhm.
protocol, okay, so we've protected ourselves. We've done that well. Good for us. Now, how about coming into the coming into the environment and actually doing the exploration? We've taken Zach Bagans' name in vain quite a bit. We actually turned him into a verb. Uh,
Yeah. I'm just gonna zag back into
yeah,
it.
but there is an idea on television that these things should be very aggressive, very much in your face. That you should be challenging these things, daring these things, and careful what you wish for.
I never enter a room unless I am granted permission. I always ask when I do paranormal investigations if we're allowed to come into the room. And I usually tarot cards for yes and no, or
Mm-hmm.
pendulum or dowsing rods to get your answers. And if they say no, then you respectfully decline and you go on to the next one. You don't enter that room if you are not welcomed. You don't force spirit communication on anybody because it's not going to be the result that you want.
What about in the case of a banishment where you need to confront something and address its behavior?
Well, that's different because that was an unwanted entity, anyways. I entered,
Right.
so it's
So,
all fair game.
so I'm guessing they don't welcome you.
Yeah.
Come on in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And exorcism for exorcism in a person is more difficult than exorcism in a place and exorcism in a actual item. Getting rid of an attachment or an is easier when you have an item, right? But when you're working with trying to exorcise a demon in a person or a negative attachment or entity in a person, it takes a lot of time.
and is it
So
fair to say that a typical person, their encounter with negative entities like this and possession is pretty much going to be zero?
oh yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. I've only encountered maybe one demon, but most of the time it's just nasty ghosts who are miserable in this life and they're miserable in the afterlife. So are they mean in this life and they're mean in the afterlife. So most of the time it's just, negative energies, negative people, negative spirits.
Well, and it's like being a paramedic. Paramedics on their job encounter very few healthy, uninjured people
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ones that get called when someone is unwell and injured. Uh, and it's the same for someone like you. This happens to me a little less. But if someone is having an issue, they call someone like us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get that sort of paramedic call that
Yeah.
a lot of people won't. But most people going into locations trying to connect with spirits are not going to encounter something that is aggressive, not going to encounter something that is trying to fight with you,
Mm-mm.
because they're actually pretty rare.
Yeah. I know when I did investigating at Baca County Jail, which is a really historic haunting and it's super active. If you ever get a chance to investigate that that location do it because it's phenomenal, first of all. But the cells were divided into two sections. One was the male ward, and the other one was the female ward. And the male ward, I think, had 3 cells. Well, the first 2 were really kind of genuine. They wanted their story heard. They wanted to communicate. But the third one at the very bottom, I mean, the very back, when we went in there, we were like, can we enter? And we heard this no. And we're like, all right, thank you, we're out. And so we're like, we're going to go back to the other spirits who want to communicate with us, right?
Right.
So
Right.
You have to be very respectful. Don't be forceful about stuff. You can be stern, right? But you don't have to Zach Baggins it at all. No. You get more responses when you know, are nice and sweet about stuff and understanding and compassionate.
When people have talked to me about possible entities in their home and wanting to deal with that, one of the things that always comes up is, first, what do you want to happen?
Correct.
Do you really want to make them go away, or do you just want them to calm the hell down and make you more comfortable? And in many cases, people, after thinking about it a little bit, go, I don't necessarily want to make them go. I just need them to stop waking me up and
Right.
making me afraid. And so we approach things that way. And one of the things I always remind them, if they are interacting with these things, you can't, you shouldn't approach them with this sort of overbearing attitude. You can't go in, the power of Christ compels you, kind of a thing. I tell them to treat this person as though it was somebody's grandma that had stayed too late to the party and fallen asleep, and they
Yeah.
have to go home now. Uh,
Yeah.
you wouldn't shake them and go, "Hey, grandma, get your ass out of here."
Exactly.
At least I hope you wouldn't. You try to be gentle and respectful and get her where she needs to go. And it's the same kind of thing, even when you're going into a place that is not yours, that you have to begin that conversation gently and like you said, respectfully, and don't act as though you're a threat.
Correct. Yeah, because you don't know their story. First of all, they may not even know they passed over. So they may be just as lost as, as irritated as the people on this plane. They just need explaining about, hey, you're not, on this plane anymore. You need to transition over, and you have family waiting for you. They need just, sometimes they need a little bit of nudging. And so you want to approach it as like a stranger. You want to get to know this person, this spirit, because you don't know what their story is. You don't want to aggravate, a spirit that, is in pain and really wants to cross over, but doesn't know how to.
Right.
Yeah.
So things have been real quiet in the questions here. Does anyone have a question? Or are you just amazed at our wisdom and how right we are about everything?
Any questions about protection or things that you can do to protect yourself during an investigation or doing any kind of spirit communication? If you do, type it in the comments and we'll definitely be sure to answer it. We got a little bit of a lag, so if you guys want to take time to type. So I think we only have about 10 spots left in our weekend.
Yes, they are going.
Yeah.
Gone. So if you're thinking about this, don't hesitate. It would be a shame if your spot got left. Elizabeth says she was just making her packing list. She is joining us, and we're very excited about that.
That's another thing, is that when you do paranormal investigations, you should have a paranormal investigation toolbox. I have an old sewing kit that I carry around with me everywhere I go. And that does include my protection oil and my protection, my salt. We didn't even talk about salt. How did we even forget about salt?
Salt is interesting. Salt is a very universal base element, very, very grounded. Whenever I get artifacts, they always sit in a circle of salt for a little while we're checking each other out. and I'll usually let it sit there for about a week or so before I ever do anything with it, just to let it calm down and get acclimated there. But salt is very easy to come by. It doesn't have to be fancy salt. Doesn't even have to be kosher salt. I'm a big fan of those tall shakers of sea salt, the coarse sea salt, and I use that quite a bit. How do you tend to use it?
It depends. When I'm doing a paranormal seance, right, I like to use either white salt or black salt as a circle. And when I'm grounding or I'm feeling like I'm a little bit flighty, especially after you're doing a seance or you're doing paranormal investigation, this your energy is just like on buzz, right? And you want a quick ground. You're like, man, I need to come back to center because I am all over the place. Then I usually put a little bit of salt on my tongue for a quick instant grounding. That works really well. For items, I usually bury it in salt or pour salt over it. And that's another way to banish items. That's like I said, when you're exercising, like exorcism, not like working out, exercising an item, I pour salt on it. Um, but I also use it as a barrier. I also, put a line in there so you cannot cross. I put it on thresholds. So I know that if I've done that investigation in that room and I don't want the energy or the entity to follow me, I will draw a line of salt on that threshold and I will keep them in that room. Especially with spirits who like to play around with you, aggravate you while you're doing investigation on these different rooms. The ones who like to irritate you, follow you, and just mess with you. I don't have time for you. Stay in your room, kind of thing. I'm talking to other spirits right now. So that's another way I use salt is I put it around the threshold so they can't, invade an investigation.
So I do have a question from Elizabeth. She says, I tend to feel too innocent and friendly, i.e., I walk into something like this not really looking for or expecting evil. Am I stupid? I think stupid's a strong word.
Yeah,
Um,
no,
but I do think that it is a situation where you can be a little naive.
yeah,
You have to have a certain amount of skepticism when you're dealing with an entity that you don't know. Treat it maybe like you would when someone sitting next to you at the bar starts talking to you.
right.
They may be friendly and just interested in some conversation and some human contact, or they may be trying to sell you something. And you have to feel it out a little bit. If you just slapped them and walked away, that'd probably be a little too much. And if you just believed everything they said and handed them your home address, then that's probably not not good either. You got to find that middle ground where you explore a little bit. And I think in communicating, of course, again, it depends on what your goals are. If you're trying to learn something from the entity and have a little conversation, then maybe you don't have to worry about that too much. If you're trying to interact with this entity for some bigger purpose, maybe a magical purpose, or trying to find out something or learn something about someone specific, then you may have to test a little bit and make
It's like,
sure that what you're dealing with is being upfront with you.
yeah, it's like, when a strange dog approaches you or you approach a strange dog, you're still going to approach it with caution, right? You don't know anything about that dog. You don't know if that dog is going to attack you or that dog is nice or what the intentions are. So it's like approaching, a strange dog on the street. So just proceed with caution. Well, you should always have caution, right?
Right.
Because sometimes things can go a little wonky sometimes. But just do paranormal investigation with respect, curiosity, for sure, and a little bit of skepticism. You always have to skepticism. That's my biggest thing is on my team, I'm like, oh, it's a ghost. And then I have another person who's like, no, Susie, it's not. So you have to have those people who are like, no, it's not. It was just a radiator. You're like, oh, yeah, damn, okay. So you
Well,
have to have a little bit of skepticism with that too. but be open, and a little bit of, caution, and is always good for sure.
And if you do feel like you're in a situation where something that you're dealing with is aggressive,
Mhm.
is pushing back on you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, is overshadowing you in some way, then the best answer to that is get out of Dodge. You got nothing to prove.
Correct.
And if something is really making you uncomfortable and pushing on you and doing things that just doesn't feel right, then you break off the communication. And if that
Blow
means
the
you
candle.
leave, you leave.
Yeah.
But you don't try to push on it. You certainly don't try to be clever,
Mm-mm.
because those are the kinds of things that'll bite you. And there's, if you establish the communication, you got a little information, and then things felt too overwhelming and you had to bail, that's not a failure. That's a tremendous success. You made connection, and you made enough of a connection to understand it enough to need to back away. That's a great success.
Yeah, I think so. And, but you have to be firm also. That's,
Right.
especially when you have to set your boundaries, know your boundaries, and they can't cross your boundaries. Remember that we have, lack of a better word, we have control and dominion over what we do and dominion over them. If we don't want them to come into our space, we stand up, we stand our ground, speak loud with firmness in our voice. You are not allowed to come into my circle. You need to leave and come back where you came from. You cannot stay here anymore. It doesn't mean that you're being mean or anything. It's just like a toddler. You're standing your ground, right? You're telling them what you're going to expect and what your boundaries are. Um, and it's not anything to do with you being mean, like is that Baggins or anything, but you have to be firm. You have to stand your ground. You have to tell them that they're not allowed to follow you when you leave, and speak what you want to them so that they are heard and that you're heard.
Right. But if you feel like you're overwhelmed, if you feel like you're in over your head,
Just
there's
leave.
there's nothing wrong with stepping back,
Mhm.
because this like any skill that you develop, is going to start with a certain level that you are at,
Mhm.
with what you're comfortable with, and
Right.
then over time you will develop more and more comfort and confidence, and that attitude that Susie is talking about will come very, very naturally to you. It's another reason
That's
why you
it.
don't necessarily want to do this by yourself. You need backup.
Correct. You never do it by yourself, and that's
Yeah.
another thing that we need to talk about. It's a couple of things I want to talk about. As it's interesting that we talked about, it's okay if you get over your head and you don't know everything, because we don't. I was watching an interview with the woman who lived in the Conjuring house, and the Warrens, right? And so the Warrens would come back to the house over and over and over again, because it was like the most haunted and paranormal house that they've ever encountered. But some things went wrong, and some things, Elizabeth Warren apologized to the family that we had no idea what we were getting into. We had no idea how to handle it. It was the first for us, and we did our best, but sometimes you kind of screw up. Everybody screws up. We don't know. This is all paranormal stuff. There's no, rule book on how you're supposed to do paranormal investigating and how it's going to go. So be kind, be understanding, and know when to leave a situation when you have to leave a situation, and know that you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and that's another one we talked about, right? Never investigate by yourself. I always tell my people and my students, you should have what I call a spotter. Now, when you're working with a Ouija board, you always have someone who's not really in the Ouija board seance. They're kind of outside of the circle, and they're going to be your eyes and your ears. So, what I call them spotters. So, what they're going to do is they're going to kind of hang out observe any changes in your behavior, any changes in the people's behavior. They're not going to be actually active in the paranormal investigation. They're just going to be your eyes and ears, so they can warn you of different things that are going on that you're probably going to miss, because when you're in an investigation, you are deep into the investigation. And especially when you're doing seance work, you're deep into the investigation. And sometimes you don't have the attention span to see what's going on with Bob and the far left. You're going to miss that his behavior is changing. You're going to miss that he broke circle. You're going to miss that he's maybe susceptible to possession or something. So that's when it's important that you have a spotter. Don't investigate by yourself. It's too easy for things to go wrong. Not even in spiritual investigation, but physical. You could trip and hurt yourself, and you have no one to help you.
If you're working with
Right?
candles or something like that,
Yeah.
one of those could get a little out of control.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, having someone engage deeply and having someone who is acting more as a watcher
Correct.
is important.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Never investigate by yourself, even if it's just one other person.
So let's just recap what we talked about. These are the top things to keep in mind when you go ghost exploring and participate in these kind of things. First, grounding and shielding are important. These can be done through visualization techniques,
Mhm.
through stones and oils and smoke. There are lots of different ways to do this, including prayers
And
and
words, right?
sayings, words of different kinds. Uh, the attitude is very important as to how you enter into things. You need to be calm and confident and open, but cautious. Um, you have to know your own space and be willing to defend it. If that means standing your ground, that's a good thing to do. If it's over your head, okay to go home and talk about it over pie.
Mhm.
um, and having a spotter, having a watcher, having someone there who is taking a broad view of things and not necessarily going too deeply into the metaphysical side of things. Someone's keeping their consciousness open, watching for safety, watching for trouble, and things that may need to be addressed. Anything from a candle catching fire in an unwanted way to someone exhibiting symptoms of something that needs to be dealt with. And if you follow these kinds of guidelines, you are going to have a much better time of it all.
Yep. And then you get to actually practice it with the Paranormal Weekend that's coming up. So the stuff
Right.
that we're telling
Paranormal
you,
Weekend, almost here.
yeah,
It'll be here
stuff that we're
before you know it.
talking about. Yeah, before you know it, it'll be here. The stuff that we are talking about during this whole, series is you can put into practice this weekend. Yep, the weekend that's coming up, Paranormal Weekend. So even though, this is what I always say, less bitching and more witching, right?
Yes.
So this is a whole weekend of getting your hands dirty in the paranormal investigating, testing things out, experiencing what it's like to have this, spirit come through and talk to you, what the energy shift is, communicating with like-minded people, talking about stuff like this, and weird stuff, weird, macabre kind of stuff, and where you're appreciated, right? We can have open conversations and experiences. And so, yeah, we had decided to do the seance in the church, which I am so excited about. That church is amazing. And so the people who get to camp over in the church is going to be really surprised, because it's very tranquil there. I'm like, I
Very
could fall
peaceful
asleep.
environment.
Yeah, I liked it there. So yeah, that's coming up September 24th through the 26th. Paid in full is $555, or 2 payments of $300. So you can break
And
those.
that includes your stay in a haunted bed and breakfast. It includes several catered meals. It includes our Friday night soiree. It includes several different tours of the cemetery and the town, haunted and historical tours. It includes our ghost exploration and seance that we'll do together, and all of the weekend full of informal coaching that you'll receive from me and Madam Z as you open up and explore your practice. So this
Yeah.
is, everyone I've talked to about this goes, wow, that's a good deal. And it really
Yeah,
is.
it
It
is.
really is.
I mean, you can't go on vacation for, 2 days. Just
That's
hotel
right.
and food is going to be way over, $500, $555. So yeah, an
And you won't have
experience.
nearly as much fun as you will with
Yeah.
us.
No, you won't. You won't. We're excited
Well,
about it.
Madam Z, as always, I appreciate your time with me on this stuff. Thanks to those who asked questions and posted. If you are watching the replay, like she said, tag your comment with replay, and that'll give us an idea of what's going on. And
Yeah.
obviously, we can't answer your question live when you post it on the replay, but we will try to reach back in and add some comments in there and answer your question. Or your question may be good enough that next Tuesday, when we have our next Cauldron conversation, we'll make it all about you.
Yep. That's what I like.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you all for joining us. Be sure you sign up at paranormalseance.com, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. All right, everyone. Witch on.